As someone who has an 11-year-old younger sister, I felt the need to actually speak on this, which is the obsession with debuting minors in the K-pop industry. Because let's be honest, this is just plain disturbing and so irresponsible and very much exploitative. So brace yourself, as I might come off as harsh in this video. Let's not sugarcoat it. Debuting minors in K-pop is barely a step removed from child labor. These kids, yes, kids are trained, scouted, and signed on to contracts that treat them like full-time employees. And for what? So they can perform like adults in an industry that's utterly brutal. These are teenagers, not factory workers, and yet here they are being pushed into 12-plus-hour days, mental and physical exhaustion, and non-stop media scrutiny. And all of this is happening while they're barely out of middle school. What other job on earth lets 14-year-olds work this hard? Hint, it's illegal. But in K-pop, oh, suddenly it's acceptable. The companies call it training, and the fandoms call it passion. I call it exploitation, pure and simple. They're profiting off the naive dreams of teenagers who think they're signing up for stardom, not endless rehearsals and lost childhoods. K-pop isn't a part-time gig where you clock in after school. It's a full-on job with relentless schedules, back-to-back music shows, world tours, interviews, fan sign events, brand deals, content creation, and hours of dance practice. Imagine expecting a 12 or 14-year-old to thrive in that setting. Most adults would tap out after a week, and we're talking about teenagers who haven't even gotten through their growth spurts yet. Let's be real, teenagers are emotionally delicate. They're in the middle of figuring out their identities, dealing with school drama, and maybe, just maybe, thinking about their first crush. Now imagine that all happening under a public microscope where they're constantly judged for their looks, talent, and every word they say. Fans dissect everything they do, and antis are always ready to hate on them just because they exist. For adults, that level of scrutiny is harsh, but for teenagers, it's a nightmare. In recent years, we've seen idols suffering mentally, some even leaving the industry or publicly breaking down. And when it comes to young idols, it's worse. Imagine being 15, and thousands of people are calling you untalented, ugly, or a burden to the group. It's enough to give anyone lasting psychological damage. It's almost like K-pop companies are setting these kids up for failure and saying, well, if they can't handle it, they weren't meant to be idols, right? Because that's a healthy approach to nurturing young talent. It's not. When are these kids supposed to learn basic life skills or, go to school? It's sad but true. A lot of these minors will never experience a normal high school life, and that affects them in ways that can't be ignored. We're talking about lost experiences, missed friendships, and zero chance to develop socially in a real way. And don't get me started on the quality of education they're getting from tutors and online classes, if they're even lucky enough to get that. Instead of building a real foundation for themselves, they're being primed to be performers and only performers. What happens to these kids when they grow up and realize they have no friends outside their idol bubble, or that they have no clue what to do if their career fizzles out by 25? The industry is setting them up for a lifetime of isolation and instability, but as long as they can perform well for a few years, no one seems to care. The fans, oh the fans. When minors debut, fans have to modes, coddle, or criticize. On one hand, fans baby these young idols, cooing over how innocent and pure they are, acting as if these teenagers are delicate porcelain figures. But on the flip side, the very same fans can turn into a ruthless, judgmental mob if their faves so much as breathes wrong. One minute they're protecting them like overzealous parents. The next, they're dragging them over a missed dance move or an off note. Take some of the youngest idols in popular groups right now. The fans swing between calling them babies to tearing them down over things that they themselves, let's be honest, would never have been able to handle as teens. This is a generation that idolizes these children, yet has no issue throwing them under the bus when it suits them. It's a weird, twisted dynamic, and it's beyond unhealthy. If we think these young idols are too innocent to handle adult expectations, then maybe they shouldn't be debuting in an adult industry in the first place. Let's talk about something really uncomfortable: the sexualization of young idols. There's no denying that the K-pop industry has a history of pushing young idols into images or concepts that are way too mature. This leads to some serious issues. When you're marketing teens in a way that makes them seem mature beyond their years, you're basically inviting fans to view them as adults and sometimes, in very creepy ways. There are young idols who get thrown into concepts involving alluring choreography, fitted outfits, or lyrics that should only ever be performed by people over 18. And then, shocker, they get creepy comments from adult fans. This isn't just a fandom problem, it's the industry actively creating a setup that walks right into these issues. No teenager should be asked to handle the pressures of being objectified, especially when they're not even old enough to consent. Here's a thought. How about we let idols finish high school before they're thrown into the industry? Minors who debut often end up sacrificing their education and life experiences. They're missing out on vital, formative years where they should be learning, exploring, and figuring out what they actually want. Some idols barely have time to complete their schooling, and even if they do, it's usually through unconventional means. And it's not just about the classroom. These are formative years for building social skills, self-confidence, and understanding the world. Without a strong foundation, young idols might struggle later in life when they're no longer in the spotlight or when they realize that they missed out on the experiences most people take for granted. When a 15-year-old debuts, fans find them adorable, innocent, and full of potential. But here's the kicker. The same industry and fanbase that adored them as teenagers might not feel the same way when they're 22 or 23. The reality is, K-pop has a notorious expiration date for idols, where youth is valued over experience. The very fans who adored them as fresh-faced kids might move on once they're too old. So now, they've sacrificed their regular life, been put through extreme pressure, and then what? A potential fall from favor because they dared to age? Not exactly a sustainable model, is it? By debuting minors, K-pop is essentially sending the message that it's okay cool, even to push young people to extremes in the name of success. It normalizes a level of professionalism and perfection that's unrealistic for teenagers. Younger fans may start to see these young idols as role models, thinking that sacrificing sleep, health, and education is the path to success. It sets a dangerous precedent that could affect fans' mentalities and their views on hard work and success. It's 2024, and it's time for K-pop to rethink the age at which idols debut. There's no need to rush teens into careers they can't fully understand or handle, especially in an industry as high pressure as K-pop. We're talking about people who aren't legally adults, being pushed into an adult world that most of us would find overwhelming even now. K-pop companies, it's time to let kids be kids. Fans, let's take a step back and realize that debuting young idols might look appealing in concept, but the reality is far from glamorous.